Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking a journey into an ancient text, actually. A list of principles that, well, they might just surprise you. We're looking at the Khuddakapāṭhe Dasasikkhāpadaṃ, which basically translates to the 10 Precepts from Khuddakapāṭhe. And it's not just, a list of rules. It's more like a foundational guide, focusing on something really powerful. Abstinence, deliberate abstinence.
Indeed. And what's really fascinating here, I think, is how directly these 10 precepts, the sikkhāpadam, are framed as acts of veramon. That word signifies abstaining or actively refraining from certain things. So our mission today is to explore each one. What were they, these specific abstentions, and what can we kind of figure out about the thinking behind them? Why these particular renunciations?
Exactly. What's the why behind it all? So let's dive in. Let's unpack this list of 10 precepts. What's the first one that stands out? Okay, our first precept. Adinadana veraman sikkhāpada, which translates to abstinence from taking what is not given. Sounds, well, pretty straightforward on the surface, doesn't it?
It does seem simple at first glance, but if we connect this to that idea of veraman, the act of choice, it lays out a very clear boundary. It's about consciously deciding not to acquire anything that hasn't been freely offered. It's more profound than just don't steal. It's really a fundamental statement about respecting ownership, respecting boundaries.
Okay, so it's an act of respect, not just passive avoidance. Got it. That sets a strong foundation. From respecting sort of external boundaries, let's shift inward a bit. The second precept is abramacārya sikkhāpadam, abstinence from unchastity or non-celibacy.
This one often gets a, shall we say, narrow reading.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Is there more to it?
Well, yes. This precept specifically highlights abramacārya as something to abstain from. In the context of someone really focused on a spiritual path, it often meant conduct that distracts from that path, usually sensual conduct. So the idea is less about morality per se and more about conserving one's energy, keeping focus away from pursuits that might scatter that vital energy needed for self-mastery or inner work.
Interesting. So it's strategic in a way, like preserving fuel for the main journey.
You could put it like that, yeah. Directing energy intentionally.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads us quite nicely into the third one, actually. Musavada veraman sikkhāpada, abstinence from false speech. This one feels, well, it feels universal, doesn't it? You see echoes everywhere.
It absolutely is fundamental. And again, the depth is in the veraman, actively refraining from musavad, untrue utterances. But it's broader than just not telling outright lies. It often includes things like slander, harsh words, divisive talk, basically any speech that isn't truthful or beneficial.
Yeah.
It raises important questions about how we communicate, right?
Definitely. The impact of words. Okay, so from speech, we move to substances. This fourth one is very specific. Abstinence from, let me get this right, fermented and distilled liquors, which are the basis of heedlessness. Wow. That phrase, basis of heedlessness, really jumps out. It's not just about the drink itself.
Exactly. You've nailed the key point there. What's fascinating is that direct link the text makes between the substances suramaraya and their consequence, being the basis of heedlessness, the pamandehana. So the abstinence isn't just from the alcohol, but from what it causes, that lack of mindfulness, that clouding of judgment. It's about avoiding the state of heedlessness.
Right, preserving clarity. That's a really different angle. Okay, what's next? Number 5. Vikalabhujana veraman sikkhāpadam, abstinence from eating at the wrong time. This sounds, well, quite particular for an ancient guideline.
It does seem very specific, doesn't it? And vikalabhujana, eating at the wrong or improper time, often specifically meant, in monastic settings, not eating after midday. But the principle behind it, again, connects to mental states. It was about reducing sluggishness, curbing desire, promoting clarity for practice, cultivating moderation. Eating for need, not just for pleasure.
So even something as basic as meal timing was seen as a tool for mental training. Okay. Now this is where it gets maybe even more interesting for modern ears. Precept 6. Nakagitavadita visukadasana veraman sikkhāpada, abstinence from stunal, dancing, singing, music, and unseemly shows. That covers a whole lot of what we'd call entertainment.
It certainly does. It bundles together Naka dancing, Gita singing, Vadita music, and Visukadasana, which is often translated as unseemly shows or worldly spectacles. It points to a general category of worldly amusements. The idea, particularly for dedicated practitioners, was that these things could easily stir up the senses, create attachments, or lead to frivolousness, pulling attention away from deeper inner work.
So it's about potential distraction again. Not that these things are inherently bad, but they could hinder a specific goal.
Precisely. It's about discernment, understanding what supports your path and what might detract from it.
Okay, that makes more sense than just a blanket ban. All right, number 7 dives into personal appearance. Malagan panatan manch na vivusanaf lina viraman sikkhāpadam. Abstinence from wearing garlands, scents, unguents, and from adornment and beautification generally.
Yeah, this is all about refraining from external embellishments, mala, garlands, ganda scents, vilipana unguents, duran wearing, menthana adornment, vipusana beautification. It's quite comprehensive. If we connect it back, the idea is that focusing too much on these things can feed the ego, create attachment to the physical self, and distract from, well, what's really important inwardly. Encourages simplicity.
Simplicity and focusing inwards. Okay. Now, this next one, number 8, is the one that always strikes me as incredibly specific. Okasyana mahasyana veramans sikkhāpadam. Abstinence from high and luxurious beds. Beds, what's that all about?
It is very specific, isn't it? And it really raises questions about comfort, indulgence, maybe even subtle forms of laziness or attachment. The text explicitly mentions abstaining from ukasayana, high beds, and mahasayana, luxurious or large beds. For a practitioner aiming for diligence and non-attachment, indulging in excessive comfort could be seen as fostering sluggishness, oversleeping, or just generally reinforcing a desire for sensual pleasure, hindering the energy needed for practice.
So it's not really about the bed itself, but the attachment to that kind of comfort, and maybe the lack of discipline it represents.
Exactly. It challenges us to think about where comfort tips into indulgence and how that might affect our focus or our spiritual energy, if you like.
Right. Okay. Nearly there. The 9th precept. Jataruparajadiyahan viramansikkhāpadam. Abstinence from accepting gold and silver. This is a very direct one about money, about wealth.
Very direct. What's really significant here is the clear instruction to refrain from jataraprachapajika, the acceptance of gold and silver, these precious metals. It's an explicit renunciation of a key form of material wealth. It underscores a commitment to non-possession, or at least non-attachment to wealth, which is seen as a major potential source of greed, anxiety, and distraction from the path.
A clear line drawn against material accumulation.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end. The text says, Dasasikkhāpadaṃ. The 10 precepts are finished. We've gone through each one, these distinct acts of abstaining from things. So we've walked through these ancient ideas. What's the big picture here? What does this all mean for us maybe sitting here today? What's the core takeaway from this deep dive into, well, the practice of saying no to certain things?
That's the key question, isn't it? I think this collection really invites us to consider the power and the purpose behind deliberate self-restraint, choosing not to do certain things. It's not just about the specific actions listed here, like avoiding high beds or music, which might seem strange out of context. It's about the why, how choosing to refrain shapes our focus, our character, maybe our inner sense of peace. These were presented as concrete practices, acts of abstinence designed to cultivate virtues like mindfulness, contentment, simplicity, detachment, essentially clearing the ground for deeper insight.
The power of restraint for inner cultivation. That's a great way to put it. Okay, so here's something for you, our listeners, to maybe think about as you go about your day. Considering that underlying spirit we've talked about, cultivating clarity, simplicity, non-attachment, single abstinence from our very modern, very busy world, what one thing, if you consistently practiced abstaining from it, do you think might lead to the most profound positive change in your own life? Something to mull over. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope you found some surprising insights, maybe an aha moment or two that sparked some reflection.